Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. First of
Well,
all, brother, can you hear me okay?
yes, I can hear you. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
First of all, one second, I had the echo from my side. That's my bad. First of all, I'd like to apologize for the delay. We had some logistical issues, some interesting issues. Alhamdulillah, we've kind of resolved them. I'd like to thank you brothers and sisters already, mashallah, commenting in the chat for your patience. Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullah barakatuh. Brother Omar, nice to see you there. Sister Amat is in the chat already. Please, brothers and sisters, share this stream. Brother Yusuf Ismail comes from South Africa. He's got a vast knowledge on the aspects of criminal law. And also this particular topic that we'll be discussing regarding what's taking place, the genocide what's taking place right now in Gaza and also other areas within Palestine. Let's not forget that this is still ongoing. And let's not forget, like some of us have forgot some of the conflicts, such as what took place in Afghanistan, what took place in Iraq. One thing that surprises me, brother Yusuf Ismail, I want to break something down. A lot of the brothers and sisters who I talk to outside my initial bubble, they're too young to remember the Iraq war. They're too young to have experienced what took place in Afghanistan and the massacres and the killing of millions of innocent people, Muslims. And unfortunately, the media also portrays this narrative that this conflict, which is taking place right now in Palestine, started in October the 7th. No, brothers and sisters, it happened even before I was born. So we have to understand the history of these conflicts and why also people migrate to other countries. And it's because the West have destroyed these countries and continue to destroy these countries. But I just wanted to open the floor up with that. I just want to let you ponder and think upon that. Brother Yusuf Ismail is joining us right now from South Africa. Brother Yusuf, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining me, mashallah. We've been going through, we've been witnessing real-time genocide happening in front of our eyes. When people talk about massacres, we read it from books of history. There was no social media at the time when the death camps happened, when Hitler was around and the Nazis were around. But now we can visually see what genocide is, Brother Yusuf. And how do you feel witnessing it right now in real time? Briefly, how do you feel that how we should really interact and the standard that the West have when it comes to armed conflict? The line has been crossed. How can we as the West now point fingers at another country for massacring people when ourselves, I'm saying the West, are funding this genocide with weapons, with money, with drones, with technology? Brother Yusuf, sorry, I know I can go on a lot more, but it really makes my blood boil. Brother Yusuf, go ahead, brother. What's it?
Yeah,
What's your
so wa alaikum assalam, Brother Muhammad, and also to the guests, and apologize for the glitches that we basically had in terms of the logistics of getting on. And I am from South Africa, so we've got our own issues in terms of connectivity as well as load shedding and lights. But as Brother Muhammad stated, that indeed what we are witnessing is arguably one of the most, or what is turning out to be the bloodiest genocide in human history. And if you look at the trajectory in terms of how many children are being killed, I was just looking at the reports now. Before, over the past few weeks, when we had this program, one would have assumed that the situation on the ground would have kind of been slightly better, would have been improved, certainly after the ICJ hearing, whereby the International Court of Justice stated that South Africa had indeed made out a plausible case for genocide. And the reality of the situation is that basically the scenario is getting far worse by the day. You are probably familiar with the case of Lina Rajab, and we may deal with her in the course of this discussion, who was screaming and begging and in fact being told on the phone to recite Surah Fatiha. And eventually she was killed and shot dead. So what you are seeing now is not just simply bombing campaigns, but you are seeing and indeed are basically witnessing extrajudicial killings and slaughter that is taking place on a scale. And this is basically brazenly taking place with complicity by the United States government and basically by the United Kingdom government. One will recall that your Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, had met with the ambassador of Israel on that particular plane, where he sheepishly walked out of that plane. That was circulated en masse. It wasn't even an official visit to Tel Aviv, but he came out of a plane and he was essentially selling and giving arms and arming the Israeli state in relation to what was going to then subsequently happen in the months and weeks subsequent to the so-called incident on October 7th. And what we basically are witnessing, as many people have pointed out, is that the speed of deterioration of humanitarian conditions is reaching a stage which is absolutely terrifying. The one big obstacle that people are seeing over the past few weeks, and more particularly now, is that the big obstacle, besides the discussion on UNRWA is now totally out by virtue of, we had this discussion a couple of weeks back, these bogus allegations, but the big obstacle is that the getting of humanitarian aid into Gaza, their border checks that Israel are basically insisting on making before trucks are allowed. But the one thing which is quite clear is that before the attack on Gaza began, only about 500 trucks a day were getting through Gaza through the Karim Abu Salem. That's the actual border post, the Kerem Shalom. Right now, virtually nothing is coming through. When you look at Alex Duval, who was the executive director at the World Peace Foundation, and he's the author of a book called Mass Starvation, The History and Future of Famine, he basically made the point that he's been studying famine, and particularly this is man-made famine. It's not a drought, it's not a natural disaster, but this is man-made famine and the use of starvation as a war crime for 40 years. That's what he basically studied. And he's looked at cases around the world. He's looked at Yemen, he's looked at Ethiopia, he's looked at Sudan, Syria, and the more recently obvious cases in recent history over the past couple of years, the siege of the Syrian regimes by Assad in 2015, 2016. And he made the point, Alex Duval, check him up. He's written a book on the history and future of famine, Alex Duval. And he stated that nothing over there, and he's looking at Yemen, he's looking at Ethiopia, he's looking at Somalia, he's looking at Sudan. And I'm talking about, the starvation that you saw in Somalia in the 1980s. That was a famous Ethiopia, for example. And he made the point that if you look at all these natural disasters, he says that nothing is comparable in terms of the speed, the concentrated effort at the destruction in terms of what is essential to sustain human life. He says nothing compares to Gaza over the last 75 years, and in particular now. The World Health Organization, where there's a lot to be basically stating about it, they've published a series of quotations from Palestinians describing the harrowing situation in Gaza. And they make the point that in certain instances, they're eating food and they have to remove worms out of it. You have a situation where Palestinians, you've got one particular case, he had a shrapnel in his head. It's affecting his vision. He has another shrapnel in his spine. He cannot move. Medicine Sans Frontier, for example, they gave an account. This is the Doctors Without Borders, where the medical staff had to flee the Nasser Medical Complex just over the past 2 weeks. And they had to leave patients behind. And the Israeli forces, these Israeli death squads, the IDF, set up a checkpoint to screen people leaving the compound. One of the individuals was detained at that particular checkpoint, and essentially the life of these individuals have been endangered. You have a situation where, for example, Israeli snipers are killing, up to, I think, at the beginning of this attack on the Nasser hospital in the southern Gaza's Khan Yunis, that according to the report by Al Jazeera, you had a situation where snipers were killing openly up to 21 Palestinians, 21, 22, 23 Palestinians. They opened fire. And this is at the time when these particular people were trying to reach the Nasser medical complex from densely populated areas. So the situation is extremely dire. The situation is gone extremely bad. And when these particular individuals have been confronted, the reality of the situation is that they always come up with this false and atrocity propaganda that bring up. They always take you back to the circle of October 7th. But the situation has become so dire. I mean, there's so many case studies. There's so many case studies in terms of what's going on that is becoming extremely shocking. And then, of course, lastly, which we may go into, is that there is this case right now at the ICJ, which goes to show that Israel is in fact even becoming more and more isolated from even countries that it considers its friends, where various countries are now basically over 6 days, that's the past 6 days that has just passed over the past week, where the World Court is basically hearing oral arguments from about 52 countries and approximately 3 international organizations on a UN General Assembly request that has been filed in 2022 for an advisory opinion on the legal consequences of Israeli practices in the occupied Palestinian territory. And so that hearing now comes as Israel continues its devastating war, which now killed 30,000 Palestinians. But I would argue, to venture to say, that the figures are in fact far, far, far in excess of 30,000. Already you've got a case where the UN court, the top court, is deliberating on the case that's been filed by South Africa, where South Africa has accused it of committing genocide. And already about 13 of the 14 provisional judges, the 14 judges, 13 out of the 15 judges, I beg your pardon, 14 out of the 17 judges at the ICJ, they've basically ordered provisional measures and have essentially found that there is a plausible risk of genocide in the interim ruling that it essentially passed. So that's the situation. The situation has become extremely dire and it's become extremely grotesque. This written opinion right now that these 52 countries are seeking to basically they're getting an advisory opinion in relation to the occupation that has occurred and is taking place both in Gaza and indeed on the West Bank. That may possibly take a couple of months. So it's approximately 6 months. You may probably get a legal opinion on that particular issue. About 6 months from now, you're probably going to get a legal opinion. And the legal opinion will essentially state that Israel is indeed engaged in illegal occupation because there's been a declaration. And so any decision that will be made will be in favor of the Palestinians. It'll be a vindication of their particular rights by effectively the principal judicial organ of the United Nations. So, are you there, brother?
Yeah, I'm here. Brother, just so much to touch on. I know the time is short that we have,
yes,
but there's so much to talk about because the way I see it, and I try to refer everything back to the Islamic or the Muslim thought process, as well as the innocent will be portrayed as the guilty people. and the guilty people will be looked upon as the good side, as to say.
Yeah.
And just today, I'm not a big fan of the Houthis or any, particular group, but the people in Yemen are willing to stand up and defend what's happening in Palestine. And look how they are being portrayed as the criminals, or they are set a standard to say what the West is doing is bad. And now the Western media is portraying Yemen as the bad guys. And I'm like, Allahu Akbar, how everything can be turned the other way around by the Western media. Sorry, brother Yusuf, I just wanted to share this thought with you, brothers and sisters, that we have Yemen, who throughout the years have been bombed. Thousands, if not millions, of innocent lives in Yemen were taken, and yet they are willing to stand up and say enough is enough, and we are willing to defend the people in Palestine. And now what's happening? The US and the European governments are bombing Yemen once again. For them, the fact that they are standing up saying that the rights of the Palestinian people must be kept up and should be there, and asking for the aggression to stop, and the oppression of the Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, to stop. But what's happening? The West are bombing Yemen for making this stance. It's shocking, brother Yusuf. It really is. And also, we, for those brothers and sisters who remember that in the early stages of the conflict, people were told to go to the particular areas of Gaza, like Khan Yunus. This is a safe area. It's and certain refugee locations. Go there. You'll be safe. And now what's happened is that they are artillery shelling these locations. They are bombing from the air, from the land, these refugee camps. And it breaks my heart, brothers and sisters, that we are just standing by and watching this genocide, as brother Yusuf just mentioned, in real time happen. We have to do more. Spiritually, I'm saying we should do more. We should make more supplications and ask Allah's aid for the people of Palestine. But now think about this jigsaw puzzle now. Ramadan is going to kick in now. It's not far away. The Israeli government and the IDF army must be thinking we have to come to some conclusion now, because I'm sure, brother Yusuf, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'm sorry for digressing, that the Muslim countries will be thinking now Ramadan is coming now. We can't let this war continue in the month of Ramadan. How will our population of the Muslim countries react to our leadership if we continue to say, okay, let this war continue? The people will stand up, brother Yusuf. They will react to the leaders and the governments of the Muslim countries saying enough's enough. People have been over 100 and whatever days that no electric, no water, no food, no aid has been let in. And now this beloved month of Ramadan is going to soon be starting. We have to put an end to this. And I think there's a lot of pressure on the Israeli government also to bring this conflict to an end, because I can see it spilling over. Sorry, brother Yusuf, I just wanted to share that thought with everybody.
Yes, you are spot on, brother Mohammed. And you know what? I respect your sincerity and your basic conviction in terms of speaking out against this, and in fact, speaking out against the hypocrisy and indeed the duplicity, not just amongst Western governments, but amongst Muslim countries. I mean, you speak about the Houthis. The Houthis have basically, at least for a certain time, paralyzed the kind of by. And by the way, the Houthis never killed anybody. They never killed anyone when they attacked those particular trade vessels. It certainly lost billions of dollars, and it economically paralyzed West and most of these shipping containers and whatever economics they were involved in for a short period, but they never engaged in any kind of massacre in response to their attacks on these economic fleets. What then happened was that the United States started bombing the country of Yemen and actually killed civilians. And I may add this one point, that this conflict in Yemen, Houthis in fact took over the city of Sana'a in September 2014. There was a rapid Houthi takeover of that particular existing government. And there was a general mobilization to overthrow the then existing president. But what then happened was that subsequently the United States, through its proxy, that is, and it's got many proxies in the region. One of its proxies is Saudi Arabia, under the psychopathic individual, MBS, who's actually running the show, not his father, then launched this military attacks and strikes and airstrikes and bombing campaigns in order to restore the former Yemeni government. I mean, although there's been no direct intervention by the Iranian government in Yemen, the so-called civil war is regarded as a kind of a part of the Iran-Saudi proxy conflict. But the reality of the situation is that Iran has got there may be some sort of a nexus or between the Houthis and the Iranian government, but the Houthis never viewed themselves, and Iran certainly never viewed them as proxies for the Iranian government. But the shameful situation is you had this Muslim government, Saudi Arabia, that had no qualms, in fact, attacking and using missiles and technology provided by the West to bomb Yemen into total and oblivious starvation. And you saw the starving children, bones and total destruction. Would they have tried that on Tel Aviv? Would Saudi Arabia have ever struck? Will they even strike Tel Aviv now? Will any of the other governments? I mean, Israel is a small regime. If you had a united Muslim front by most of these so-called Muslim governments, forget attacking Tel Aviv, forget basically engaging in a military campaign against the state of Israel. Just simply refuse trade. If Qatar, if Turkey, if Saudi Arabia just simply stops any form of trade, because the trade continues all the time, it'll totally paralyze Israel. It will leave Israel a total existing pariah as it is in relation to the rest of the Middle East, and indeed as it's becoming a pariah, at least from an ideological point of view globally. It stops its military trade with Israel. It stops it places a total oil embargo. It refuses to sell any products whatsoever. The state of Israel will be paralyzed. They can't even do that. They cannot even do that in the face of the genocide. And I'm surprised when I hear these kind of shrieks and cries out that look, and which is a new phenomenon for us, certainly in the South African context, because we've always had this history of struggle against the apartheid regime and against evil regime and against oppressive and tyrannical regime. But in the recent years, and when I talk about recent years, the past decade, I never even knew of the existence of an ideology of a group of individuals that call themselves the Madkhalis. And a lot of them are even in Dawa circles. I never even knew of such a group. I even never knew the background and the ideological underpinnings behind such groups. But these are the kind of individuals that essentially lay the basis for suggesting that regardless of what kind of oppression, what kind of tyranny, what kind of injustice that people see, we just need to simply sit back. It's a kind of a quietist pacifist movement, to the extent that basically you just simply sit back and allow oppression to happen wherever you see it, regardless of where you see it. You just simply that's not what the Quran speaks about. If you look at Surah 4 verse 75, where the plea is called up, where the people are asking Allah to send us someone to liberate. Surah 4, Surah Nisa, chapter 4, verse 75, liberate us from some degree of tyranny and oppression. It's speaking about standing up against injustice. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he gave his message to the early pagan Qurayshi communities, he was basically speaking out against and standing up against a tyrannical, oppressive regime. And it was just not simply the message of Tawheed that went directly against the heart of the Qurayshi aristocracy, but he also challenged the socioeconomic injustice that he saw before him. He challenged the economic setup. He challenged the political setup. He challenged the fact that, he basically asked society, and through the wahi that he received, was basically calling upon man, calling upon the Meccans of the time to realign themselves with the divine power culture. In other words, that you acknowledge that power does not belong to man, but the actual power is that which is attributed at the end of the day to Allah. So it's so essentially the call to Islam was also the calling of the individuals to realign themselves to the divine power culture, in a manner of speaking, which is and can only come and emanate from Allah Himself. And so when you see the Muslim hypocrisy, and when you see the fact that most of the so-called states like Saudi Arabia, like the UAE, like Turkey, for example, which talks one thing and says something else, essentially most of these countries are basically proxies of Western governments and Western powers. And the fact that Muslims basically are quiet about this, do not speak out against it at the very least, and do not and have the gall to say that someone living in South Africa like myself, or someone like you, Brother Muhammad, living in the United Kingdom, that's got no allegiance to, for example, countries like the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia. We've got no allegiance to them whatsoever, that we shouldn't even speak out against them. They don't rule us. We're not subjected to their rule whatsoever, nothing whatsoever. We're living in at a different time. We are living in our respective countries. There's no Muslim Khilafah that exists at this particular juncture. There's no allegiance that we hold, and we should just simply keep quiet. So I'm glad that you called out the hypocrisy that you see in the Muslim world, or the so-called Muslim world, and that the Houthis have basically been one light that has spoken out against it. I mean, it takes a country like South Africa, not a Muslim country, a country like South Africa, my country, and I can criticize my country, and I speak out against the policies of the ANC government on a number of levels. But they, in fact, took the state of Israel and asked that the ICJ place it on trial, and stated that there's a plausible case for genocide that they need to basically speak out against. And of course, right now, where you see the emotions are in fact running high, the ICJ, most of the countries that are basically coming out and in fact are presenting oral arguments in terms of what is standing and what is happening in relation to Palestine, what's happening in relation to the occupation of most of them are not Muslim countries. These are non-Muslim countries that are making the argument as to why they support or oppose the measures that Israel has in the occupied Palestinian territories. And why is it that out of, 62 or 67 Muslim countries, not one had the ability to bring an application to the International Court of Justice? And fair enough, there are lots of flaws in international law, and I'd be the first to admit that. But why could not one country, a Muslim country, take a moral stance in relation to what is basically going on in relation to what is happening in Israel? I think I was listening to a discussion by, I think, the excellent brother Sami Hamdi. He was speaking, I think, to Brother Eddie on one of his shows, where he states that you have a situation where land, I think he gave the example, and I must just check what he exactly said, but land is being bought and being sold directly to the Israelis in Saudi Arabia, and indeed in terms of what is happening in Israel generally. So you've got a situation where you've got duplicity en masse in the Muslim world. And whilst we can talk about the hypocrisy of the British government, and certainly what happened in your parliament a couple of days back, where I think on the official opposition day of the Scottish National Party, they were basically outmustered by this corrupt Labour Party of Keir Starmer, and essentially denied the vote on the the ceasefire. I mean, one can speak about the duplicity and hypocrisy of your government, of the United States government, but what is shameful is that our Muslim countries have been less than helpful in terms of what we can see happening. And so when you've got countries like Saudi Arabia, and I've seen just pictures, I mean, you can't look, when people go on Umrah, which is a lesser pilgrimage, I've seen images and videos of people that wanted to make a political statement in terms of, I think, showing the Palestinian flag as a principled issue, I think, outside the Kaaba, and they were arrested by Saudi police. You're not allowed to speak about these particular issues. I mean, what's the purpose of this global gathering of the pilgrimage, of the Hajj, of the Umrah? I mean, this was not
back slightly, Brother Yusuf. I want to push back, and I'm not one of these hosts where I'm not going to 100% agree with my guests.
Okay.
So I am going to push back, and I do apologize.
Sure, of course, you're entitled to.
I actually have the other view on this particular matter which took place, because the flag was shown when people do the tawaf just not far from the haram itself, while within the Kaaba. I actually disagree, but I actually say that that place is a place of ibadah, and it shouldn't be used for taking selfies or
of course,
and making political statements. I don't agree with that. It should have been done in a different location if they were going to do it. And I've seen images where people have and heard stories and saw videos of when people say, well, I'm from Palestine, that the people embrace the brothers and sisters from Palestine. As for showing the flag, it's like me going for Umrah now, having the Pakistani flag.
And no, of course, I get the point.
But yeah, and also the term madkhali, myself, I am actually from the Salafi kind of creed, al-Hadith creed. And I don't call for any type of rebellion against a Muslim ruler. I think any criticism should be done in front of the ruler or people of authority. And then if you are martyred or jailed or whatever, then you are, rewarded for that, because that's the rights of the people. And also I was reading about this in a book called The Creed. I'm sorry, Brother Yusuf, I don't want to digress.
You can go ahead, brother.
I read a lot of creed books, like the Manhaj books, and criticizing the ruler should be done in a private matter. It shouldn't be done in an open manner. And also me and Yusuf are not saying that the Muslims should rebel against the Muslim ruler, start busting up the cities or spray painting.
No, we're not calling for that at all. Not at all.
No. I want to make it clear.
I mean, we use our voice to communicate, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm not calling for anarchy. That's not what I'm calling for.
That's right, yeah, I'm not saying don't raise up concerns against the Muslim rulers. I'm not saying that. We should have the ability to do that.
You see the problem, brother? I think the problem what I have is that a lot of these people, I think, that I come across, and not so much in South Africa, because South Africans generally, even the Muslim community, have kind of got a history of struggle with apartheid and so on. And I mean, there was a lot of things going on both sides of the spectrum and war crimes on both sides. But I think the problem is that there is this tendency that people say you cannot even speak out against tyranny and oppression and injustice in the Muslim world. And I think I've got a fundamental problem with that. In the sense of, this is not kind of like a personal affair. It's like, it's not like somebody has engaged in a personal transgression and now you're going, or he's like an adulterer or a fornicator, and you speak to him in private and advise him accordingly, which is, I think, what the hadith that they infer refers to. But I mean, the idea that something has got a global impact and we should just keep quiet about it. I mean, this is our business. We're in the game of speaking out against injustice wherever we see it. And I think that's the point. But at the same time,
I do agree with you. We are ordered to do that, to speak out. against if injustice, even if it's my own father, even against myself, or whatever. If I see you doing an injustice, my job is to advise you, and that goes as a blanket command from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to advise each other, in goodness and so forth. So yeah, I just want to. The reason I want to clarify that is because some people take clips from my channel and say, look what Brother Muhammad is upon and all this. I just want to clarify that because I'm not for the rebellion of or of some type of physical.
I understand that you can also be checked by your own government, because I think in your country you're not even free to say anything positive about Hamas, as I understand. I mean, if you are viewed as, so I think there's a bit of a tightrope that you walk on. So I've taken that into cognizance. But I mean, from our perspective, we just say it as it is in relation to that. I agree with you to a point that Hajj has become, and the Umrah has become, a kind of a selfie. Kind of issue and a show and so on in relation to that. And maybe the point you made is pretty valid. But I think, if you look at the philosophy of Hajj and the philosophy of Umrah, I'm not talking about, just showing flags, but, one of the major philosophies, I think I read a book by Ali Shariati, who was Iranian, but not Shiite in terms of extreme Shiite, embracing the Shiite theology. But he made the point that one of the philosophies of Hajj also lies in the fact of it's an ibadah, but also there's a political dimension to it itself, because there's a devotional aspect in relation to it where you come together. But he made the point that one of the dimensions of Hajj which has been neglected is also a political dimension of this kind of ritual, which has not in fact been recognized. I mean, for example, if you look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that when he was calling people to attend the Eidain, and he even made the point that even get your menstruating women there. Now, of course, menstruating women will not engage in the actual ibadah or salah because of the haid and the period that they're experiencing at that particular time. But why was it that he emphasized on the fact that you get your men, you get your women, you get your children, even menstruating women? And many people have pointed this out, that it was a kind of a psychological blow, a psychological death blow to the Quraysh at that time, to say that, look at the numbers of these Muslims. Look at the fact that they are increasing in numbers despite our oppression, despite our tyranny. They are basically increasing in numbers, and their presence is becoming more and more evident. And this is essentially a force to be reckoned with, in a manner of speaking. And I think to a certain extent, the Hajj, at least when you look at the actual the final pilgrimage, or the entry into Mecca, that was a kind of a political message that the Prophet ﷺ was sending out to the Quraysh at that particular time, which led to the eventual, I wouldn't say subjugation, but the eventual surrender. And of course, sent out a message to the surrounding tribes around the Arabian community. And of course, you had a lot of, you had subsequent to that, the aspect of Hunayn and so on and so forth. So when, for example, you look at the Hajj, and again, I'm using this term loosely, when you look, for example, at the Islamic pilgrimage as a kind of a political statement itself, you have to bear in mind that from the outset, to perform the Hajj pilgrimage the way it was performed, or supposed to be, just as the Prophet ﷺ broke the idols down and then eventually performed the final pilgrimage, just as he broke the idols down, we also have to break down the idols of our time, just at the same time. And the idols of our time, one could make the point to a certain extent, the idols of his time were the Qurayshi aristocracy, and indeed, of course, the stones that they had put up. But the idols of our time are what? We've got materialism, we've got the economic estranglement of our communities. You've got, for example, the political elites, both in the non-Muslim and the Muslim world, that has basically strangled us as a community, as a global Muslim politic. And so my point and argument is, and I understand that, Brother Muhammad, that this is maybe, I don't know how, but it shouldn't be controversial, but some people may see this in a controversial light, is that I would argue that we shouldn't deviate from that particular duty that the Quran and the prophetic paradigm has basically prescribed for us. So every time we go for pilgrimage, every time we engage in an act of ibadah, what are we saying? Muslims, basically more than 1 billion Muslims are basically saying that we're coming together as a unit. We should not follow what America says. We should not follow what Russia says. We should not follow, it's neither East nor the West, we are a global Muslim body, a global Muslim politic. That's what the unity is. Your aristocracy falls out of the wayside. Your elitist status falls out of the way. And that's the whole purpose of wearing the ihram and indeed shaving your head as a form of humility itself. So doing away with all kinds of egotistical behavior and idolatry and polytheism. And the polytheism should not just simply be viewed in the sense of, what you see around you, but essentially, basically, the polytheism of the worship of the self, worship of material wealth, worship of the symbols of material wealth. So if you see the symbols of material wealth all around you, you see McDonald's and KFC or whatever the case is, and these are basically the kingpins of the global economic elite, which is used to sustain, for example, the oppression of the Palestinians. What do we do in a situation in relation to that? So there are a lot of factors. So this idea of labbaik, here I am at your service. So that's a departure of the ego of the self, departure of the subservience to any kind of establishment, and you just simply pointing out to the supreme being, and then you're seeking the blessed guidance of the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's a negation of the idols and the tyrannical rule of our time. And that's basically, in a sense, what the pilgrimage basically entails. But I mean, this is a total digression. I wasn't even expecting to go down this particular.
I do apologize. It's probably my fault for digressing.
No, that's fine, and I think it's important.
Sometimes, as a host, and of course, I want to make it clear to the audience. Sometimes I have a different point of view, and I don't want to seem to be afraid that I have my own point of view. And I'm willing for people to push back and tell me, Muhammad, I think you should reconsider. And I'm quite happy to also signpost people to say, I think, we need to just be a bit careful about how we portray things. But I just want to also emphasize, brothers and sisters, that we have a person here in the UK by the name of George Galloway. And I don't know if Brother Yusuf has heard of him. He has been doing amazing work for over 50, 60 years plus of promoting the Palestinian issue. And currently he's in Rochdale, which is mainly a Muslim area. And he has been really asking for support to get him voted into also the Houses of Parliament, so he can actually be a voice for the people of Palestine. And like I said, I'm not a political person at all, far from it. I would definitely recommend the brothers and sisters to check out Brother George Galloway and try to do as much as he can in his support. Brother Yusuf, I want to ask you.
I've met him, Brother Muhammad. He was here in South Africa in fact, there's a video, the IPCI, when I was with them. He was in South Africa, I think in 2000 and my memory serves me, 2006, 2007. He was hosted by the Center for Civil Society at UKZN, which is a university that I studied at, and hosted by a number of Muslim organizations, both in South Africa and indeed in the SADC region. So I did, in fact, have the privilege to meet him. Obviously, we don't know each other personally. I would like to interact with him, but he gave a number of lectures, and quite a passionate lecture. I may send you the link to the recording of the program that was recorded by the IPCI on George Galloway's phenomenal lecture. And he's certainly someone that deserves Muslim support. And if he's standing up as I don't know how your politics works, but as a potential MP for Rockdale, because I believe there's another character, Azhar Ali, that's been kicked out or thrown out by Labour or something. Yeah. Something has happened there. I hadn't followed the entire news, but I just read of something or came across something. He had made some statement about Israel having allowed October 7th to happen or something along that line, which led to which allows it to commit its genocide. And I think he's been removed by Labour.
Yeah, absolutely. He's forced to step down. And to be honest, in where I am here in the city of Coventry, is majority Asian political members. A lot of them are Muslims here in Coventry, and the doors have been slammed on their faces here because of their involvement with not helping to solve the issue in Gaza. And like I said, here in Coventry right now, this is like the season for people to knock on your door and ask for votes. You have not seen them show their faces. They are running scared. It doesn't matter what party you are, Conservative, Labour, or the Muslim members of parliament or councillors have been shut down big time. And the hypocrisy of these so-called councillors have been shown. They don't really do it for the community. They majority do it to fill their own pockets and get the perks of being a councillor. But nevertheless, that was a side point. I really wanted to ask you, Brother Yusuf, is regarding why do the IDF target journalists and lawyers and people of the medical industry? Just today, we had the killing of the Palestinian human rights lawyer, Dana Yaghi. Also, 40 members of her family, including children, were massacred by the IDF. There does seem to be a targeting of journalists and doctors and professional people. Why do you see that, Brother Yusuf?
Yeah, it's remarkable because we've always heard this point, and it takes me back to the issue of Israel's right to self-defense. Israel does not intentionally target civilians. Israel does not intentionally target women and children. But the reality of the situation on the ground is that, as I pointed out on the previous occasion, now the figures are just increasing. This is the war in recent times with the highest number of journalists ever killed. This is a war in recent times with the highest number of UN officials in fact killed. I think the figures are close to about 200 UN staff workers killed. This is the recent conflict where the highest number of medical staff that have been killed. I mean, there was a report I saw. I've just uploaded it to my South African Debate Initiative YouTube channel. And those out there, I don't want to promote my channel. It's not monetized in any way. You can click on subscribe to South African Debate Initiative YouTube channel. You get some. This video may probably be up tomorrow there. But this is a conflict where the highest number of journalists, medics, doctors, hospital workers, UN staff workers, and just simply non-combatants in recent times have been targeted and killed. So just forget the arguments that are being made. Just the actions alone belies the notion of self-defense. The one point, there's two arguments that are being raised in relation to that, is that, number one, Israel is engaging in self-defense. We showed that this argument was totally bogus because under Article 51, whilst Article 51 allows you to defend yourself against another sovereign country, Article 51 does not allow a sovereign nation to defend itself against a nation, against a group or community that it occupies. So even the Hamas security breach, if you want to call it, that happened on October 7th was not basically an invasion of a sovereign territory. It's not sovereign. It's not Hamas entering into a sovereign territory. They were just simply going back to a land or a piece of area that was kibbutz berry, where they were kicked out. For the argument of self-defense to work, there has to be a conflict in question that must involve two sovereign countries. And both those countries have to be defined with land borders where one country invades the territorial integrity of another. That never happened there. So the Palestinian territory, Gaza, has been under occupation. And since it's been under occupation, you can't raise the point of self-defense. Francesca Albanese, I think I quoted her, made the point that you cannot claim the right of self-defense against a threat that emanates from a territory that a nation occupies or from a territory that's under belligerent occupation. It's totally flawed and it's totally false. The second point is that the human shields argument is, it's been repeated ad infinitum. I mean, the contrary position is actually applicable because if you look at reports from Amnesty International, Israel has been shown to using Palestinians as human shields where they've arrested Palestinians and taken them into territory that they want to either destroy or people that they want to kill. So Israeli soldiers have been shown to use Palestinians as human shields, not the other way around. Second point is that if they are human shields, are they human shields by consent or are they human shields by being forced? So both ways the argument falls down into the gutter because number one, let's assume there's someone that is a criminal that has held people under siege in a supermarket, and now all those people are being kept as human shields so that nobody can target him directly. Let's assume one person. Now they're being kept against their force. So what would you say to a government or police force that decides, look, we've now made this decision. We're going to get to him, we're going to blow up everything, including killing the people and those people that are being kept hostage by this one man. What would people say to that? They would say this is an atrocity. This is madness. This is insanity. So take the example, the famous example, the infamous example of the Jabalia refugee camp, that when they wanted to get to, when they destroyed or killed about close to 100 civilians, their argument was that there was one single Hamas militant that was there. So in order to kill that one Hamas militant, you have to kill 70 to 80 people. So in killing, when you bomb the refugee camp, do you know that 70 to 80 people are going to be killed? And the answer is, well, maybe we do, maybe we don't. Well, if you do know, then what would you call those deaths? Are those accidental deaths or are those inevitable deaths? If there's inevitable deaths, then that's clearly murder under criminal law. If they're accidental deaths, then how can you say they're accidental by virtue of the fact that you maintain that these people are human shields? And if they're human shields, are they being human shields by virtue of consent or by being kept under control of these individuals? So on all levels, sorry to burden you with the technicalities here, but on all levels, this is total rubbish. It's absolute garbage. In fact, the Israeli human rights organization, Bet Selem, during December 2008 to 2009, stated that they received notification that in actual fact, it was Israeli soldiers that were using Palestinians as human shields, not the other way around. And even if one were to look at the Israeli frame of reasoning, their justification of killing civilians through human shield, faces a number of hurdles. For example, it basically suggests then that Israel as a government has absolutely no moral agency. It's got no moral agency, and so it's got no moral offense to targeting civilians and merely viewing them as collateral damage. Essentially, they have not even entertained the possibility of eliminating the enemy without killing civilians in the process. So if you do not entertain the idea of eliminating the enemy, your so-called enemy, without murdering civilians in the process, then essentially you are saying that you have to kill people to get to this person. So that's murder by any definition. So it's a fallacious argument. It's a flawed argument. It assumes the existence of a symmetry of power between the so-called involved brutal, belligerent side. And in any sense, in any objective sense, the Israeli side basically enjoys a military and strategic superiority. It's a superior superpower.
Mm.
So
I
how
don't
can
know
you
if you.
use this argument, this absolute power edge, to bombard civilian areas and target civilians? And then it makes the argument that, look, it is targeting civilians it's targeting Hamas using precise, absolute care and concern. But if that's the case, how is it that they're killing so many children? How is it that they're killing so many civilians? How is it that they're killing so many medical staff? How is it, as you made the point, they're killing so many journalists? How is it that they're engaging in destruction of houses? Every house, every mosque, every infrastructure, everything has got a tunnel. And I mean, there was that report in CNN where the embedded journalist of CNN, I don't know if I shared it with you on our last podcast, the embedded journalist of CNN made the point that they took him to an area and it was a cemetery, the blowing up of the cemetery. What's his name? The journalist's name on CNN. Just type in CNN bombing and destruction of cemetery. And he asked them why they're bombing the cemetery. There are tunnels. And so he asked them to take him to the tunnel. So they took him to a tunnel. And so happened that the tunnel never went underneath the cemetery. So when he asked them to show him the actual portion underneath the cemetery, the IDF forces were clearly shown to refuse showing him that. And when he asked them why did they refuse to take him there, he says for his own safety. So they were clearly lying, and they expected CNN, which is their friend in terms of media lies and propaganda, to go with the actual Israeli Hasbara narrative. But in actual fact, they didn't. This guy, kudos to him, actually spoke out and showed that the destruction of the cemetery was no justification whatsoever. What about Lina Rajab? Lina Rajab, the little child, the little girl that was basically killed a couple of days ago, she was calling out, and they killed the aid workers. They killed the aid workers that went to help her. They killed her family, and eventually they killed her. So this is insane. So if you claim to have such precision, why is it that your precision is not helping you in relation to killing babies, massacring children, and destroying whole communities? And forget bombing. Forget bombing. Now we are seeing actual incidents, as we've seen from December, of them shooting dead Palestinians, like in the Shadi Abu Ghazala school. They're shooting dead Palestinians. They're shooting them dead because you're seeing images of Palestinians that have bullet wounds. There's no bombing that takes place, but certainly entire neighborhoods, these Israeli death squads go through and they bomb the entire community of individuals. And what they do to justify is that they rely on this atrocity propaganda. And so in the last segment, I would like to, if you allow me to do that, just share one segment with you about this total falsehood of the so-called rape that took place on October 7, which has been debunked as totally bogus. So that's the point I'd like to raise with you in relation to the last question.
Can I just have a couple of minutes? I just wanted to share your thoughts and get your thoughts on this particular debate that happened between Norman Finkelstein and Rabbi Shmuley, or whatever his name is, this cursed individual. I did send him a message on Twitter, ask him to join us, and I never had.
If I may make the point here, if I could just make the point here, and maybe you could clip this post, and so we can use this opportunity. This character, and I have no hesitation in calling him. One of your brothers called him Unholy Shmuley, but this guy is a scumbag, Rabbi Shmuley, and his whole aim is to basically defame and disparage individuals. He's got no substance. Him, Rabbi Shmuley. There's another character called Joseph Cohen. If you are able to debate us on substance, well, give Brother Muhammad a call on this particular channel, or anyone out there, any Zionist thug, any Zionist propagandist, any individual that wants to defend genocide, come on this platform. We can let us know, let the brother know, and we'll be willing to engage you. Michael Brown, I put out a challenge to him. It was going to be held on Brother Louis Dizon's channel, and at the last minute, he backed out of that particular debate, and there was a response that in terms of where he took an objection to a comment that I'd made on my Facebook page where I stated that anyone who defends Israeli genocide is a pervert. He found that very objectionable, and he terminated any kind of further debate engagements in relation to that. It was going to be it was going to be flighted on his radio show, Faith on Fire, as well as being hosted by another Christian YouTube channel. So it was going to be a Christian forum, was not going to be a neutral platform, and I'd agreed to come on, but at the last minute he backed out. But if him or Rabbi Shmuley or Joseph Cohen or anyone else wants to debate us, contact Brother Muhammad. We'll be more than willing to host this particular program, and let us know. We want to hear from you. We'll give you the opportunity to speak. We'll give you the opportunity to communicate your ideas, and we'd be willing to entertain you and your propaganda, and of course, interrogate your views and positions. But over to you, Brother Muhammad, on Rabbi Shmuley.
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to hear your thoughts about some of his allegations and his suggestions that, you know, the breasts were cut off women and they used them as play footballs, but they were shot in their genital. There's no evidence whatsoever of this taking place. Sorry for saying this, but I do apologize to our brothers and sisters. This allegation of gang rape and all this nonsense, there's no evidence whatsoever. And I felt after watching that Norman Finkelstein, I've got his surname now.
Finkelstein, Norman Finkelstein,
yeah, Finkelstein. Yeah, I thought he held himself amazing. The way he never got soaked into the rabbi's argument, he stayed on the topic of the judgment of the ICJ. And just briefly, Brother Yusuf, how do you feel that looked for the rabbi? And even Piers Morgan, I think, seemed to take the side of Norman, Piers Morgan did. And then towards the end, he had to play the card of the Hamas card. Do you denounce it? And I noticed that because he had to make it, he had to balance it out. I'd love to hear your thoughts briefly on that.
Yeah, briefly. Firstly, Piers Morgan is no longer on Talk TV. So, I mean, his show has been removed from Talk TV. He's no longer on Sky News. So I think they've allowed him to use the studio and continue with the YouTube channel. But his program is no longer appearing on Talk TV. It's now limited to being a YouTube channel. He was on Sky News Australia. He was on Fox. The actual Piers Morgan Uncensored show, shown under different platforms under the Rupert Murdoch News Corporation, all the media channels. So he's no longer there. He's now just limited to a YouTube channel. Firstly, I thought it was shameful. I think there was a bit of pushback by Piers. Piers should have called him out and stopped this sham and the scoundrel, the so-called fake Rabbi Shmuley. The one thing that came out, which certainly incensed me, is that Shmuley knows nothing on basic facts. He had the audacity to come on and state, and clearly lied. And then, this is an inversion of reality. He accused Finkelstein of lying, but he lied. Shmuley lied that South Africa had its case. South Africa lost its case at the International Court of Justice. What rubbish is that? South Africa lost its case at the International Court of Justice, and the International Court of Justice made an order that South Africa is not committing genocide. And the one thing which angered me, it appears to me that most of these major news hosts out there don't even know what the ICJ application is, because I was surprised that Piers Morgan never even called him out, because Piers clearly is clueless. He doesn't know what the case is all about. The rabbi himself is a clueless fool. He doesn't know what the case is all about. And Norman, unfortunately, was given limited time, and he doesn't speak very fast. He's not a fast speaker. He's a scholar. He's articulate, but he doesn't speak. I think he's in his 70s, so he's much more slower than what he was in his younger days, certainly from what I could see in debate. Because you look at his earlier debates with Alan Dershowitz in the mid-2000s, he was on fire. He's not as aggressive in debating fashion as he was in his younger days. But the point is that Piers and a lot of these Western media outlets are not even familiar with the ICJ case. The ICJ, I mean, how do you even start? How do you correct ignorance? When someone, for example, tells you that 2 + 2, as Zakir Naik used to say, is equal to 5. How do you, if you're so convinced in falsehood, how do you correct him of this falsehood? The ICJ, firstly, South Africa did not even lose any case. The case is before the court. It's like a criminal case. There's a pre-trial hearing, and now the state has determined that it's got a prima facie case, and now you're going to be put on trial. And that's essentially what Israel has done. But what the ICJ, just to quickly wrap it up, has stated that South Africa has made a plausible case for genocide, meaning there's a prima facie case. Secondly, 90% of the provisional measures that South Africa sought at the International Court of Justice were granted and were backed even by the Israeli judge himself, Aaron Barak. He backed the provisional measures. They also faced and made the point that a lot of the cases and the statements of genocidal intent, Judge Donahue, who is now no longer there, the ICJ, made the point that the case of genocidal intent by a number of the Israeli leaders were clearly evident, and it made an order that Israel needs to now go and censure and indeed criminally charge within its own legal framework those particular statements of criminal intent. I don't know how they will do it, because some of the statements have been made by its own leadership, including Netanyahu. And clearly it made the point that there's a plausible case for genocide. So where this character says that South Africa lost its case, I have no idea. I have no idea in terms of where he came out. So that's a one rubbish which was totally totally debunked. You can't even discuss such an issue. The other point is he made the issue of the rape allegations. And I think on this particular point, I need to share something with you. I'm going to try and share screen. This particular channel, and I urge brothers to see this, share screen. I'm just going to try and share a screen here. New York Times. I think can you see the screen now?
Yeah, I've got it now. I've got it. I'm
yeah.
put it on now.
So this is, are you able to see the screen? So this is, I'm just going to go up. This is basically from an excellent website by Ali Abu Nima, brilliant guy, the Electronic Intifada. And this is, I urge brothers to go, but it goes on to this New York Times article, which deals with the issue of where this article was of rape came up by an individual called Jeffrey Gettleman. And this basic article relied on an allegation of rape against one woman. And that allegation of rape was in fact debunked by the family members of that rape victim. Now, he makes a point, and he calls this particular individual here. His name is Ras Cohen. I don't know if you can see this. This is his Twitter account. Can you see this? Can you see the screen? The Twitter account of this?
It's clear, mashallah.
It's very clear. So the Twitter account is clear there. This individual here, Ras Cohen, the eyewitness. This is the eyewitness that keeps changing his particular story. This particular individual here. Now, if you look at this specific individual, and let's just go back. I just want to close this and go back to this this particular thread. If I can just see him. Can you see this? Can you see this image?
Yeah.
Can you see this image here? This image. Can you see the image? Is this image clear?
Yeah, it is clear. Yeah.
And can you see the next image? Sorry, let me just close this here. There's an image I just want to show you here. Can you see this picture? Is this clear?
Yeah.
Can you see the selfie? Can you see the selfie and the thumbs up? Can you see that?
Yes.
Right. Now this thumbs up image, this picture of this character who spread the story of the mass rape, this is a picture and a selfie taken by him about a couple of hours after the Hamas attack. Can you believe that? This is an individual. This is directly from his particular Twitter feed. This is immediately, this was after the incident of the actual rape. So this is, as you can see, Rasko and Shum are two of the four eyewitnesses who claim to have witnessed rapes during the Nova festival. On October 7th, this is afterwards, Ras posed a smiling selfie while lying in the very steam bed with Shoam, where they claim to have witnessed the rape. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So this is the individual that is basically involved in the so-called incident of the particular rape that is taking place. Then we've got a situation here, Propaganda and Company. I hope I can open up the subsequent pages here. Propaganda and Company, breaking propaganda, but more particularly the individuals that are here. Let me just see if I can get the specific. It's called here thread is called the rape victim that keeps on changing the stories. For some reason, I can't seem to open the full thread itself. But let me just see if I can click on this here or click on that there. It just shows that. Let me see where I can go here. Propaganda and company, highlights. It basically shows that there were numerous individuals, numerous interviews that this guy was giving. For some reason, I can't seem to open, but there were numerous interviews that he was basically going and giving out. And essentially, it was only after about the 5th or the 6th time where he was interviewed that he came up with the particular story of rape. And prior to that, there was no allegation in relation to the rape that had taken place. The other aspect is that the lady or the woman that had claimed to have been raped, and this you can see. Do you see the news article called Mondeweiss? Can you see that?
Yeah, it's clear, Brother Yusuf.
So the New York Times reporter, Jeffrey Gettleman, reported that this lady, Gal Abdush, was raped. But the family of the rape victim, has on numerous accounts repudiated the allegations of rape. And let me read this out to you before I close up. It says, on December 28th, the New York Times published an investigative report on gender-based violence on October 7th. The story repeats the October 7th testimonies that have previously been debunked, including the testimony of that guy there. That's one of the guys. Although claiming its story proves the attacks against women were not isolated but part of broader, the veracity of the New York Times was undermined almost as soon as it was published, including from Abdush family, who says that there is no proof that Gal Abdush was raped and that the New York Times interviewed them under false pretenses. A heartbreaking account, working class, the newspaper. The report, they said this is according to Times, the video went viral. The newspaper did not link to the article. The newspaper narrates a tragedy of the family and so on and so forth. It goes on. There's a key issue here. And this is what they say. On December 29th, the Israeli website Ynet published an interview with Eti Baraka, Gal Abdush's mother. In the interview, the mother says that the family knew nothing about the sexual assault issue until the piece of the Times was published. We didn't know about the rape at all. We only knew after a New York Times journalist contacted us. Then on January 1st, Nissim Abdush, Nagi's brother, appeared in an interview. During the 14-minute interview, Nissim repeatedly denied that his sister-in-law was raped. He explained that his brother Nagi had called him at 7 in the morning, saying that his wife was killed and that he was next to the body. Then he continued to communicate until 7:44 and never mentioned anything that informed them of these doubts or the investigation. Neither the police nor the forensic experts. In the interview, Abdush reiterated that his brother's wife was not raped and that the media invented it. Gal's sisters, this is a lady raped, also denied allegations of rape. Her sister Tal Baraki says, nobody can know what Gal went through. I plead with you, stop spreading lies. Stop spreading lies. There's a family and children behind them. No one can know if she was raped while she was burnt alive. Have you gone mad? I've spoken to Nagi personally. At 7 o'clock, Gal was killed by those animals and they shot her. Nagi was alive until, that's her husband, until 8:15. Like Amiral, Gal's sister wrote a comment on Instagram. I can't understand all these reports. There were many different stories. Why the story in particular? It is based on one video published without the family's knowledge. So when we go back to the electronic intifada, they actually point out to the New York Times article. And if you go to the New York Times article here, and we open the New York Times article, this false story, it's called Screams. Let me just put this clip down. Screams without words, how Hamas weaponized sexual violence. And you go and you see these burned vehicles, again, burned by the Israeli force, not by Hamas. But one of the individuals, in fact, the core individual that was behind these rape allegations, is this guy here. Can you see him? Can you see this guy here? Ras
Yeah.
Cohen, a security consultant who survived the October 7th attacks by hiding in a dried up steam bed. And in the steam bed, we find him taking selfies. So imagine this man is he's seeing basically women and children being raped. They're being shot in the vaginas. They're being massacred. Women are being dragged. They all gathered around her. She's standing up. They started raping her. I saw the men standing in a half circle. One penetrates her. She screams. I still remember. Then I saw one of them raise a knife, and then he cut off her breast. They slaughtered her. This is a guy that saw this particular incident. He saw this particular incident, and he's narrating this. And then he took he basically went and took cover in the steam bed where these particular individuals were raped. And then eventually he's taking selfies. He's found to take selfies. So you know what's going on? What's going on this particular instance? That he's taking selfies in a stream where he's actually seeing these particular individuals being raped. Does this actually make sense in any way, shape, or form? Does this make sense? I mean, this is the individual. This is the character that's basically behind all this garbage that you essentially see. I don't know if we can play videos. Can you play a video? Are you able to play a video?
Have you seen
if you
this
can,
video?
I can hear it.
Blinken spreading atrocity
Can everybody hear it?
to the U.S.
Can
Senate.
you type in
family
one?
of four, a
If
young
you
boy
can
and
hear
girl,
it.
6 and 8 years old, and their parents around
Can
the
you hear it?
breakfast
So I'm just going to play what Blinken says here. Look at what he says.
table. The father, his eye gouged out in front of his kids. The mother's breast cut off. The girl's foot amputated. The boy's fingers cut off before they were executed. And then their executioners sat down and had a meal. That's what this society is dealing with.
Secretary Blinken wants you to believe that this actually happened, but the entire story is a lie. It has been thoroughly debunked. Most, if not all, of the atrocity stories coming out are bogus lies. We've seen them get debunked over and over. So it begs the question, where are these lies coming from? Who is behind them? And why do high-level U.S. officials keep repeating them? Well, the answer is likely going to disgust you. You see, there is a sort of race to the bottom taking place right now between competing Israeli disaster relief groups. It's a competition to see who can tell the most disturbing story. Oh, you saw beheaded babies? Well, I saw babies being baked.
So he goes on
And
to discuss
disaster
something
relief
called
groups
Zaka.
that are fighting for media attention and
So
charitable
I want to share with you what Zaka is. So Zaka, let me go to Zaka Wikipedia and just see what Zaka is. If it'll open the page. Zaka Rescue Units. Zaka. Can you see my page? Are you able to see my page?
Yeah, it's nice and clear.
Zaka is a series of voluntary community emergency response teams, each operating in police districts. Now, these are the individuals that came up with the atrocity propaganda, but I just want to show you the history of this organization. This individual, the actual founder of Zaka, Zaka's founder, Yehuda Meshi Zahav, co-founder and main figure for more than 30 years, awarded the Israeli Peace Prize in 2001. There have been multiple accusations surfaced of him having committed sexual assaults against women, girls, and boys over several decades with the knowledge of others in the community. Channel 13 reported that Zaka officials had known about abuse allegations and worked to silence the claims. Meshi Zahaf subsequently resigned Zaka and relinquished the Israeli prize. But this is an individual. And in the aftermath of the 2023 Hamas attack, Zaka was said by the Israeli newspaper Haaretz to have given several incorrect reports of atrocities allegedly committed by Hamas against children and babies that were widely circulated in the media. Zaka acknowledged mistakes were made. When we find that bodies were burnt or in a state of decomposition, we can easily be mistaken and think the body is a child's. Our volunteers were confronted with traumatic scenes and sometimes misinterpreted what they saw. So essentially, the Israeli social security data reveals the true pictures of the October 17th deaths. And the reality of the situation is that they were said to have lied. Their own individual, their own person, their own individual, their own organization. This organization here, Zaka. This is a source of the atrocity propaganda that has now found its way throughout. So when you hear Elon Levi and Mark Regev and Sky News or Talk TV or BBC or CNN speaking about atrocity propaganda, this comes from Zaka. And Zaka, the founder of Zaka, was a pedophile. The founder of Zaka has had a history of having committed sexual assault against women, girls, and boys over several decades, and Zaka, in fact, covered that up. Now, imagine the irony of this, that you are spreading rape atrocity propaganda, and your own founder is a known rapist and pedophile. I mean, what is going on here? What on earth is going on? So this is a kind of lies that we can see, and I would urge people to basically speak out. And the Electronic Intifada, particularly by Ali Abunima, has done a phenomenal job, and together with Nola Barros-Friedman, and you can clearly see that the so-called mass rapes that have said to be occurring was totally false. Totally false. As you can see, did the Israeli voluntary group handling the dead of October 7th exploit its role? The Zaka volunteer group began collecting bodies. An investigation reveals cases of negligence, misinformation, and a fundraising campaign that uses the dead as props. Can you see that? This is a problem. Zaka is not a trustworthy source for allegations of sexual violence on October 7th. This is the organization behind the atrocity propaganda that you essentially see. Zaka has played a key role in Israel's orchestrated propaganda campaign, spreading fake news and vague information in the service of Israel's genocidal war on Gaza. So basically, a significant part, and this is the report by Minister Netanyahu to Zaka teams, we need to buy time, which is also buying by turning to world leaders into public opinion. You have an important role in influencing public opinion. Zaka testimonies give us the maneuvering room. Can you see that? So Mondevais does an excellent background deconstruction on why Zaka is not a trustworthy source for these allegations of sexual violence. And the very individual that was spreading these violence and sought refuge in the place where the rape took place, he's sending smiling selfies. I mean, this guy is a madman. What's he doing? Sending smiling selfies on his Instagram page just immediately after he witnesses a particular rape. Does that make sense? It's insane. So what you need to know is the key points, as mentioned in the New York Times, in the Electronic Intifada. The key points are: the New York Times identifies 4 eyewitnesses for alleged rape. One of these, Ras Cohen, is the one that's found taking selfies after he saw these atrocities and smiling. He didn't look too traumatized. Each of these eyewitnesses, whose accounts are not new, lack credibility. This is either because their stories are inherently unlikely or impossible. There's a lack of corroboration, including bodies and other physical and forensic evidence. The Times investigation, like the previous Washington Post, does not confirm the existence of victims of physical or forensic evidence. Zaka, a leading newspaper, it's a Jewish religious group, and has been caught falsifying atrocity propaganda. Zaka was founded by a man accused of serial mass rapes over a number of decades. This is confirmed even on Wikipedia. And despite Israel saying there are tens of thousands of videos, the authorities have not claimed that a single one of them shows a rape or a sexual assault taking place, and a glaring absence, not one. Not one. And this is a guy, propaganda and his company. For some reason, I can't seem to find the particular thread which shows that this man is changing his story at every single angle, changing his story non-stop. For some reason, it's not opening. But this is a guy, this is the individual that keeps changing his particular version, keeps changing his story, keeps changing his version all the time, and his story doesn't make sense. These are the people that you see that are basically sharing. And as you can see here, victims of capitalism. This is a person. These are 2 of the eyewitnesses. This is a New York Times, a young Israeli. This is a New York Times report, and it says that he found cover He's an Israeli. He worked in the DRC, training Congolese soldiers, the scumbag. He provides some cover to the areas, and then he sought refuge after the attack in a steam bed. He says they all started raping her. They penetrated her. They used a knife on her. They cut off breast. And this is after the incident. Does this guy look, is this guy for real? So he's giving
this.
He's
got his thumb up, hasn't he? Has he got his thumb up? Is he like got his thumb up?
He says one of them raises a knife. They slaughtered her. Then Shoam Guetta, one of Mr. Cohen's friend and a fashion designer, said the two were hiding together in the steam bed. This is a New York Times article. He said he saw at least 4 men step out of the van and attack the woman who ended up between the legs. He said they were talking, giggling, and shouting, and that one of them stabbed her with a knife repeatedly, literally butchering her, cutting her breasts up. This is what the scumbag Rabbi Shmuley, who we're challenging for a debate, was lying on the Piers Morgan show. And Piers Morgan, there was no pushback by Piers Morgan. He sat down like a clueless fool, saying nothing. And this is a steam bed that he's sitting in. Can you see the thumbs up?
Yeah.
This guy has witnessed a rape. This is on his Facebook page. He's now removed. I'm sorry, his Instagram page, which is removed. But Electronic Intifada has caught it. They've done phenomenal work. This is his Instagram page. And what do you see? He's smiling next to the other guy who's escaped. He's got a thumbs up. He's got a thumbs up. He's smiling. And he has just said, he's told the New York Times, he just saw a woman being butchered, gang raped, cutting off a breast. Read the New York Times article by Jeffrey Gettleman, which Hillary Clinton repeated, where she was heckled recently, I think last week, which Anthony Blinken repeated at the Senate hearing, which every single media news outlet has been repeating. And this is a guy. This is a character. These are the individuals that are behind the kind of the rubbish that you essentially see. And it goes on. This is another article. This is a senior CIA, John Stockwell. And this is a short clip I may play. This was during the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Look what he says. Let me see if this guy, if I can play this. I don't know if you can play this. Can this be heard? Hold on a second. Can you hear it now?
I can't hear anything.
Can you hear now?
Slight voice. I can hear some mumbling, but I can't make it out.
Okay, look, what he's basically saying is that during the Cuban Missile Crisis and certainly subsequently, we pumped dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. We ran fake photographs that made every paper in the country. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create the illusion of communists eating babies for breakfast. Can you see this clip here? This is the actual post. Can you see this? This is a former CIA agent, John Stockwell.
You know, brother Yusuf, the narrative they always bring why there's a high rate of innocent people dying in Gaza is because Hamas is using them as human shields.
Yeah.
How much bullshit? Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I apologize for using that fact. How much more BS can we listen to from these media outlets where they are saying that women and children are used as human shields? There's no evidence of that. There's nothing of. I've not seen anything. It just really shocks me how much, I want to say it again, how much BS there is that coming out from the media. There are innocent women and children in refugee camps being slaughtered. Are they human shields? What kind of human shields?
This is the point, brother, is that what they needed, what the Israeli Hasbara needed, they were always wanting. I'm going to go further than Azhar Ali. Israel, basically, as far as a year ago, they knew about the fact that Hamas was going to basically, there was going to be a security breach. They knew fully about this, and they allowed it to happen in order to basically ensure that in the long term, they can basically enter Gaza and decimate Gaza and destroy it and eventually basically get their civilians, Israeli settlers back into Gaza and take control. It's part and parcel of the Zionist project. But they wouldn't be able to do this and they wouldn't achieve this without the atrocity propaganda. Therefore, you have to have this kind of atrocity propaganda of mass rape, of cutting off women's breasts, of these so-called lies there. They needed this. This needed there. It had to be justified because of the fact that without it, they wouldn't do this insane behavior. And they can basically justify this. Look, Hamas raped people. So this is the article. Yossi Lando, the head of operations for the southern region of Zaka, Israel's volunteer, told CBS News on Wednesday that he personally saw adults and children, including babies, who had been beheaded. That's a lie. It never happened.
Biden came out the next day. He clearly said it after the 7th of October. He said he saw pictures and images of beheaded babies. What a bullcrap that was. And also in the West Bank, brothers and sisters, Hamas does not control the West Bank. And throughout these 100+ days, thousands and thousands of innocent people have been detained, taken by the IDF to unknown locations, possibly being tortured to death, probably being raped and whatever, possibly. Okay. And there are
this is another point, which maybe in deference to your MP Azhar Ali, I don't know if this will go out, how far this will go, this podcast will go out to many people. But if you can see this New York Times article, can you see this New York Times article on the page?
Yeah.
Israel knew Hamas's attack plan more than a year ago. Now, the report is Israeli officials obtained Hamas's battle plan for the October 7th allegedly terrorist attack before it happened. Documents, emails, but Israeli military dismissed the plan as aspirational, considering it too difficult for Hamas to carry out. The approximately 40-page document, which the Israeli authorities codenamed Jericho Wall, outlined point by point exactly the kind of devastating invasion that led to the deaths of about 1,200 people. So now my question is, if the story is correct, if there was a blueprint that they knew, and Hamas followed the blueprint, according to the New York Times report, this is their media with shocking precision. The document called for a barrage of rockets and the drones to knock out the security cameras and automated machines. How come Israel just stood back and allowed this to happen? In the 2019 Great March of Return, when people and little children were walking towards the Israeli security wall or the Israeli apartheid wall, just as a peaceful return to say, look, symbolically, we're unarmed, we want to come back to our land. They were shot dead in cold blood by the Israeli death squad and the IDF. And so if they knew about this a year ago, as the story goes, did they allow this to happen? Did they allow Hamas to come in and at least hold back their security for some time and then invoke the Hannibal Doctrine and so on and so forth? So I think that's what Azhar Ali was essentially trying to say in relation to allowing it to happen. And this goes back to the whole point. Was this maybe a false flag operation in order for to allow Israel to allow the so-called military operation to occur and then go and totally destroy Gaza? So it gives an opportunity to destroy Gaza, just like the Nazis. The Nazis couldn't engage in the insane mayhem and massacres in peacetime. They wouldn't have been able to commit what they did in 1937, in 1936, in 1935, or 1936 after the Olympic Games. They were only able to do it during wartime. And similarly, it would have created a massive stink for Israel to basically just go into Gaza and obliterate and destroy the place. They needed a background story. They needed the atrocity propaganda. They needed, as the New York Times stated, a blueprint for what Hamas may possibly do through their intelligence and networks like Shin Bet and Mossad. They probably knew the plan. If they obtained the plan, if Israeli officials obtained the plan more than a year ago, meaning they were prepared and they allowed this to happen. Is that what really happened in order to basically engage in this insane behavior of theirs that you see and this genocide? This is the reality of what's going on. So
there is a pattern.
That's all I can say.
I do see a pattern with the Western governments and their plans, is that every war that they seem to have started, they always say the women are being oppressed. Have you ever noticed that? Especially in Afghanistan, the women are being oppressed. They're forced to wear the burqas. Same with Iraq. Same with the majority of every Islamic country. They always say that the women are being oppressed. And this here, Brother Yusuf, has really expose what
Yeah.
you've just done there, have really exposed their hypocrisy, their double standards. And I really appreciate, mashallah, that particular segment. And I will definitely clip that because that is
If you can clip
valuable.
this segment, this will be fantastic and show this world. And certainly, you know, clip the segment. We are putting forth a challenge to Rabbi Shmuley, to Joseph Cohen, to anyone out there who wants to challenge us. Come on, Brother Muhammad's platform, and we are willing to take you on. And we want to unclog the brainwashing that you may have gone through, unclog the brainwashing, deconstruct the fallacies that you've been made to listen to, the atrocity propaganda and all that garbage. And maybe you can go out there and do the job, Cohen and Rabbi Shmuley, if you are basically, if the falsehood and the propaganda that you are so used to propagate is broken down before you. So I'm going to leave it at that, Brother Muhammad. Unfortunately, I may have to go. I understand that time's at a premium from my side. We'll be losing power shortly. We also have load shedding in South Africa, which is because our power grid is under severe, enormous strain. So I'm going to bid all the brothers peace and greetings and salams. And then
Really a pleasure.
we hope
Really
to have maybe during the week another session. I'll keep in touch with you, and we can certainly do that again.
Really appreciate your time. I really, really do. And like I said, I do apologize for the late start. We had some issues. Alhamdulillah, we fixed them. MashaAllah. But yeah, Yusuf, it's always a pleasure having you on.
Fantastic.
The knowledge and the information you share. You know, one thing I really want to emphasize, brothers and sisters, that we need to really expand on these streams, especially with Brother Yusuf. We need to get this message out. So please share this on your WhatsApp group. Share this on your social media. We really need to get the figures up for the views on this, because we need to get this message out. And I feel anybody who speaks out regarding the Palestinian issue, they are muffled and silenced, and kind of sometimes even the channels are being taken off. With Sister Aesthetics of Islam, this sister here, she had a channel, and I think due to some of the content that we have been playing, her sister was, the channel was taken off, and now she has just made up another channel. So please, if you brothers and sisters haven't subscribed to the sister's channel, she had to make a new channel. Please subscribe to the channel. Also, Brother Yusuf, if you don't mind putting the link to that channel that you mentioned, the South African debate initiative, if you can, that'd be fantastic. If you don't mind.
Yeah, here's a chair. You basically just click in and type. I've put it there. South African Debate Initiative. I'm going to try and let me try and just give the. Let me try and send the link for the channel. And if brothers could subscribe to that channel, we give local content. I'm just going to try and get the channel, the YouTube channel, and let me see if I can get this here. I'm going to send the link to you.
Fantastic. I really want to ask if people want to pass this on to any of these so-called pro-Zionist speakers. I really want you to get this message out that we are happy on this channel to organize a discussion with Brother Yusuf. You can contact Brother Yusuf even on his Facebook, and the name, of course, is Yusuf Ismail. If you look for it on Facebook, you'll contact him. Please inbox me or inbox Brother Yusuf, and we can arrange a discussion on this particular topic. And also, sorry, Brother Yusuf, I'm getting messages now. Intifada website. Yeah,
I'll send the electronic Intifada. Let me send the electronic Intifada link. And it's a fantastic website. It's been around for a number of years. By Brother Ali Abu Nima, he's a fantastic brother. I'm going to send the link, which basically opens up. This is entirely, it covers up in detail the rape allegations. Let me send you the link now. I've sent it in your chat box, and you can post this on your once the stream is live on YouTube. Once you upload it on, I've just sent the link here in relation to that. That'll be fantastic. I've also sent you the link pertaining to the links that you can click on, the so-called sources of Zaka, the false news, all of that. Go and read the material and share it with others so that people can be exposed to this. and because not a lot of people know about this, and this must be shared en masse in the media. So I'm going to bid you farewell, Brother Muhammad, and wish you greetings of peace and the brothers out there. And we will definitely keep in touch till then.
Yeah,
inshallah.
Inshallah. I do apologize if I spoke over you a couple of times.
No, that's fine. That's fine. This is the purpose of these discussions.
If I have a thought process, I've got to let it out. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. Let me just remove Brother Yusuf. So yeah, brothers and sisters, thank you for tuning in. Sheikh Umar, I do apologize for keeping you waiting. Subhanallah, it's been a fantastic show. You wanted to say something, Brother Omar. Please go ahead.
You could say it's a blessing. My grandfather, who was a prisoner of war in the Second World War, he was a prisoner of war with the Japanese. He was one of the few survivors of one of the long walks. My grandfather told me when I was a young teenager about Israel. Firstly, Israel is not a country. It's a state, man-made. They haven't earned it. They've never, ever earned it. But my grandfather, he told me, once the Christians start suffering, along with the Muslims in Palestine, things will change. And things, mashallah, sadly, too many people are dying on both sides of Christianity and of Muslims. And the people are starting to wake up to that point. Now, also, what is the best way to destroy a country or a people? With propaganda. And what's the best way with them? Newspapers. Twist the truth or blatantly lie, as they do these days. Same as politicians. The UN, they're saying this, that, and the other. But the UN can't do nothing. Because if America abstains from whatever they decide, same with Britain. As soon as they decide anything and they decide to abstain from it, nothing will be done. America gave over, I think, 3 years, 32 billion in finance, in money, dollars, presumably. What did they do with that money? They used that same money to lobby the Senate. That's why they control, basically they have the control of America, of where they spend the money and what they don't. Same with Britain, 400 million a week goes to Israel. That money is used, same again. Use our MPs to stand for them. But the worst thing is, people read the newspapers and believe what they see in the newspapers. I dread to think of all the people that died in the First World War, the Second World War. If they could see what the world is now and what is happening, they would have never fought in the war. And the truth being is, Israel was made to create mischief amongst the Muslim states, the Muslim countries. That's about it, really, Ashraf. Alhamdulillah. I've had my moan, I've had my whinge. May Allah bless all our brothers and sisters who are here listening. May He grant you all Jannah Firdaus, long lives, health, happiness, and wealth. May you cross the bridges of Sharat faster than the blink of an eye, faster than the bolts of lightning, and faster than the speeding horses of Jannah. May you be amongst the first ones to enter paradise. Ameen.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Oman. Really nice to see you. MashaAllah, you look fantastic, to be honest. You look younger than me, MashaAllah. May Allah protect and preserve you, MashaAllah. I just want to quickly say, I know the month of Ramadan is not far away. We have to really be conscious about what type of dates tamar that we buy. Don't be fooled by the packages saying that these are Palestinian dates. Really have a look at the package, do some research, Google it to find out which is authentic Palestinian dates. I know it might be difficult due to the blockade that's taking place, but brothers and sisters, please be careful where we as Muslims spend our money, especially in the month of Ramadan. And also I wanted to say that the masjid in Ethiopia is nearly finished, and I'm planning to raise £100, just £100, to do like an opening ceremony there and feed the community and maybe do an iftar later on in Ramadan. So I'm trying to generate £100. If you guys want to be a part of it, please donate via super stickers, super chats, or becoming a member. Just asking for £100. That's all. Inshallah, if you are unable, I will try my best to raise the £100 on my own. But if you guys want to be a part of it, feel free to donate, so we can do like a opening of the new masjid in Ethiopia and do an iftar there. Also, Jazakallah khairan. Brother Omar, thank you for joining us. I did reach out to a couple of the Zionists, Joseph and Rabbi Shmuley. They never replied back. Just want to start. We have to do 3 times. Yeah, inshallah, akhi, Brother Mehdi, I definitely agree, but just one step at a time right now. I really just want to raise like £100 so they can do an official opening of the masjid just before Ramadan, and everybody can see the donations and where they went. Big shout out to Sister Salika, who donated for the water pump, and now, mashallah, they are doing wudu with the water pump. So think about all the blessings that people are getting for their donations, which we did last Ramadan. And to be honest, brothers and sisters, I was speaking to somebody regarding doing good deeds, and sometimes it's good to forget that you did some good deeds. And I was reminded the other day of what our charity, the Confronting Faith Foundation, have been doing, and people were sending me clips and videos of me being in Sierra Leone, and I totally forgot about it, and what we did with the orphanages there and whatnot, and what Sheikh Nasser is doing right now in Libya. And it's good sometimes to forget of some of the good deeds that you done, or some charity that you have done in the past. And may Allah accept it from all of us. And just a quick reminder, the month of Ramadan is not far away. So don't forget to keep your heart and your lips moist with the remembrance of Allah. Read as much Quran as you can. Make supplications as much as you can. And try to get into the habit of fasting now, especially the month of Shaban. I think this is right now. Try to redo Mondays and Thursdays at least, and keep yourself occupied with the remembrance of Allah. Don't be disheartened by the enemy. Don't think that the enemy is winning. Everything is by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From this conflict in Palestine, I've seen so many people take the shahada after witnessing and seeing the belief of the Palestinian people, how they stay strong and how they maintain themselves when they see their family members being martyred, and how joyful they are even though they have witnessed their loved ones being shrouded and being buried. And so never give up with the hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the most merciful. And really, brothers and sisters, we are the ones should be pitied for, not them in Palestine. MashaAllah, they are being martyred and they will get the highest rank in paradise without any question. So and the children will be like birds. So birds of paradise. So don't think, inshallah, don't pity the children. They will be entered into paradise without even being questioned. But pity ourselves for our shortcomings. And may Allah make it easy for all of us. Ameen.
Ameen.
Thank you so much for watching. Barakallah feekum. May Allah protect and preserve us. And inshallah, we'll meet again soon. But don't forget to like and subscribe and share the streams. We need to really promote these streams with Brother Yusuf Ismail. Alhamdulillah. Brother Omar, Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate your companionship. And may Allah make it easy for you. And inshallah, you'll get well soon.
Ameen. Ameen.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Final words from me. Subhanaka wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Ameen. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.